Double Dragon jumps into the fray of the beat-em-up resurrection, but is it the next step in the beat-em-up evolution? Or should it have been left in the archives of gaming history? Let's find out. So it seems there was a nuclear war, cities are ravaged as one might expect, and the population is just not having a good time of it. New York is now controlled by the gangs, and they basically create chaos as they fight amongst themselves for total control. Marion was injured during one of these gang conflicts and carried to the dojo where Jimmy and Billy are by the new mayor of New York. The mayor seems to also have come to the dojo looking for the master to help take down all these gangs. We learn that Master Lee is missing and that Billy and Jimmy are his sons and disciples. Marion suddenly becomes uninjured out of nowhere and pleads to Matten, who we find out is taking care of Billy and Jimmy, that they all need to act right away to help the suffering citizens of the town. Billy and Jimmy jump in pleading as well and tells Matten to join them. Look, I'm honestly not even sure what to say about this story at the moment. It's kind of a means to an end, so let's get on with the review. When starting a new game in Double Dragon, you get to pick out of 13 playable characters, 9 of which are locked initially though. The game offers co-op or single player, which when you're playing single player you can actually pick 2 characters and then tag out between them while you're playing through the missions. You can only tag out though when your super meter is full, so you kinda have to balance out dishing out more damage versus having the ability to swap out to another character when things get tough. And things can get tough pretty quick in this game as the ramp in difficulty happens pretty swift. I can literally go from me destroying tons of enemies to getting overwhelmed and slaughtered in this game in a turn of a dime. It also doesn't help that the tag system is not a clean break for the next character. The character trying to escape from the tag out can still get caught up in all the damage onslaught you're trying to avoid in the first place, and possibly even die before making it off the screen. It's not a mechanic I'm necessarily upset about, it's a choice they made. It's just, it makes the game super infuriating sometimes when you're trying to turn the tide only to have the character get knocked out and the character tagging in do little damage and then get beat to a pulp. The mission structure in Double Dragon is probably what I find the most unique overall. There's 4 stages to choose from, you can pick them in any order you want, and they become increasingly more difficult as you complete each one. And the boss at the end of the mission can be completely different if you fight him, the first time you picked a mission. He'll be super easy and you'll find him at the end of the first stage. If you fight him on the 4th mission, he'll be on the 3rd stage in a different location and possibly even have a unique mechanic you won't see if you fought him early on. The only problem with this mission structure setup is that I realized early on there was a couple of bosses I did not want to fight towards the end. I knew they were going to be super difficult and give me a hard time, so I just front-loaded those and did the others at the end. While I didn't unlock all 13 of the characters, a reason I'll get to later in the review, the ones I did unlock, they felt different enough. Each one had a unique action button type and they all had 3 unique specials to each of them. The basic attacks really just came down to whether you were doing up close first distance attacks, and you can also run and do a run attack plus a jump attack that differs based off of whether you're single or double jumping. I actually found myself rarely using the action button attacks though. I mostly used the normal attacks and jump attacks and running around a group of NPCs to corral them together to use a super and get a large crowd control reward. It's not the most engaging gameplay, but I found that was the easiest way to get the health I needed or rake up money for tokens. Also, the supers can be kind of a mixed bag in the game because you can immediately get knocked out of them pretty often, or they just don't do enough damage overall to get the crowd control rewards you're looking for. Speaking of crowd control rewards, there's a mechanic in the game where if you take down 3, 4, or 5 or more enemies with certain weapons or your special attack, they'll generate what they call crowd control rewards, which will reward you with 3 types of health regen items based off of the amount of enemies you took down. In early missions, this is actually a really good way to rack up some money because if you don't need the health, they'll reward you with money instead of health. The interruption of them saying the reward each time early on was fine, but it got kind of old pretty quick and it would have been really nice to have the option to disable that. Outside of the story, the whole point of the game is based around how much money and tokens you can walk away with by the time you end the game. When you start the game, you have several game balances you can move to make the game easier or more difficult. You can actually choose if you want infinite continues, having to spend tokens to continue, or permadeath. All these factors into the way of how many tokens you'll walk away with from the money you end the game at. At any point in time, you can actually choose to quit the game, and when you go back into the save slot, you can then choose the cash out option instead of continue. And after beating the game a couple of times, that's actually what I did a lot just to rack up tokens. I just kind of hit a point where the game started feeling mundane, and I would get as far as I could, and if it got too difficult, I'd be like, alright, let's cash out. Quit, cash out, start again, go a little further, until I decided I just didn't want to do that anymore. As I mentioned, you spend tokens to unlock characters, artwork, and hints. Yes, I said hints. This is not the first time I've seen a game do this, but I will never understand the idea of having to play through a game and actually do well at it to unlock hints to tell me how to do well at it. It seems super counterproductive, and they are the equivalent to load screen hints, which they would have had plenty of time to show, since another problem with this game is that the load times on the Switch, which is the version I played, are horrible. I clocked the time from character select to mission select at around 30 seconds, and then from selecting a mission to actually getting into the mission at around 20 seconds. This is almost a full minute time from selecting your character to playing the game. That doesn't even include the time it takes to load the game in the first place to get to the title screen, or when you're loading between different missions. Between stages, you can choose to spend money on power-ups for your characters, or actually forfeit the power-up for an additional $500 in cash. From what I could tell, the power-ups you can choose from are random each time they're presented to you. On my first couple of playthroughs, I was using them, but then, again, I just started forfeiting for the cash to get more tokens for the unlocks. I kind of made the assumption I would focus on the unlocks and get them done, and then when I played the game later, I'd spend money on upgrades. But then I hit the unfortunate point where I just kind of didn't want to play the game anymore. I actually like the pixel art of the game a lot. Each stage and character looks well drawn, and the animations are really good. The animations of the attacks and the reactions of the characters getting hit are also quite nice. The music is okay for what it is, if not a bit repetitive, but the sound effects really do a good job of relaying the hits and having a good impactful feel to them, which you kind of need in a fighting game. Unfortunately though, all the story screens are static and lifeless overall. When you beat a boss, there's kind of a weird single screen comment made, and it's just kind of goofy. I did run into some bugs as well playing the game, and one actually locked me out of the room while I was outside the boundaries of it. Luckily, the enemies kept making their way over to me, and I was still able to take them out and escape once the pass opened up again. And I already mentioned the poor load times, so I won't go into that again, but hopefully they get addressed with a patch. I have to say I was pretty excited for this game. I grew up with Double Dragon in the arcades and played a ton of it on the NES, and it'll always be something I look back at with rose-colored glasses. But seeing what they did with other classics I loved growing up recently, like Streets of Rage and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, I really thought this might be something great, but unfortunately it's just not. I got a couple rounds of enjoyment out of it before seeing all the cracks start to surface. It just feels phoned in overall, and with no good reasons to keep playing it. So some more quick inside baseball before wrapping up and giving my final verdict. My buddy and I were actually discussing if number score reviews, like I've done in the past, are still the way to go. So I'm going to move to more of a recommendation-based method unless there's some kind of weird outpouring of wanting me to do number scale reviews. I was thinking of doing something like a must buy during a sale, wait for a deep discount, or just pass the game up overall. Double Dragon gets the honor of this first new method, and for me it borders slightly on the deep discount if you have to have it, and more on the just pass overall. I just don't think it's worth the money right now. And that's my review on Double Dragon Gaiden, Rise of the Dragons. Have you played the game? Do you like it? Do you not like it? Let me know in the comments, and until next time, thanks for watching.
Stay back!